Hello and welcome to the UBP podcast. My name is Peter Kinsella, Global Head of Foreign Exchange Strategy at UBP.
Hi, I'm Kun Chow, EM Macro Strategist.
And today we're going to talk about Brexit. It's the story that just won't go away. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So Kun, where are we? What do you think is going on?
Oh, the situation's very uncertain, which is why we have you here. And so tell me, what is the current situation?
So the situation at present is that last week UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has sent his so-called final offer towards the EU. And that final offer basically includes a secondary mechanism to deal with the contentious Irish border backstop. And his idea is that Northern Ireland will remain in regulatory alignment with Southern Ireland, and that's both for agri-food and indeed also for industrial goods. However, he is saying that Northern Ireland will remain in the UK's customs union. It will leave the EU's customs union, meaning that there is an inevitability of customs checks at or near the Irish border.
Is this enough to bring the EU on side?
I think it's a step in the right direction, certainly as regards regulatory alignment. I think the border issue regarding customs is going to be contentious, and in particular, the stipulation that the Stormont government would have an effective veto over the continuation of this scheme every 4 years. That's likely to be problematic for the EU. However, they haven't totally shut it down. So if this is an opening gambit from the UK side, perhaps it's something the EU might be interested in discussing further.
And if we get that, can we see like an extension of Article 50?
I think, as things stand, yes, that's possibly likely. As things stand, under the Ben law, UK Prime Minister Johnson is basically will have to request an extension of Article 50 unless he's signed a deal with the EU by the 19th of October. The next big date is, of course, the European Council Summit, and that's on the 16th and 17th of October. So if they don't have a deal done at that stage, Johnson's going to have to request an extension of Article 50. And the idea there basically is that by asking for an extension of Article 50, let's say for between 3 months and 6 months, that gives the UK the time it needs in order to go and call a general election.
Oh, exciting. So we go from something exciting to something even more exciting. But will a general election change anything?
Well, this is it. At present, if you look at the polls, most of the polls give the Conservatives around 35 to 40-ish points in any general election.
Which is an improvement.
It's a modest improvement, but we know that the polls, for what they're worth in UK elections, that they haven't really predicted things very accurately in any of the last number of elections for a variety of reasons. What we can say for certain, though, is that Johnson is likely to lose seats before he's even started. And by this we mean, if you look at the Conservative MPs in Scotland, they have 13 seats there. It's quite likely they're going to lose at least 11 of those seats. So before Johnson has even started, he's going to be down. And the real problem for him is that he's going to have to take Labour seats. My view really on this is that Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party are, of course, likely to lose some seats as well, particularly in Northern England. And my view is that this forthcoming UK general election will be won and lost in the north of England. If you look at Johnson, he spent a lot of time outside of London since he became Prime Minister. And he's announced a number of policies, particularly law and order policies, which are normally very, very sort of popular with, sort of working class, white industrial sort of workers in England. And I think that's exactly what he's looking to do. He's trying to take or to steal normal, or let's say disenfranchised Labour voters. And this may well prove to be a success. We'll see how things go. But that's his strategy.
So you're painting a picture which is not a bad one, where we get not a no-deal Brexit, but an extension. We have elections in the near future, and elections which importantly don't return a Labour government. What's going forward for UK assets? So what's the worst case scenario? What does that do?
Well, there's a couple of scenarios. The first scenario would be if Johnson managed to get a majority of between 20 and 30 seats That's by far the best outcome for UK and for the UK assets. It's quite likely in that situation he will argue that the backstop should apply to Northern Ireland only. And he can do that because he will no longer be reliant on the support of the DUP party. So that would be the best situation indeed for UK and indeed for UK assets and sterling, of course. Additionally, I think that, or what's possibly more likely, is that if you look at the polls, we may end up in a situation of a hung parliament where nobody has an outright majority, or we end up in a situation where we have a minority-led Conservative government. And that's going to be quite messy for UK assets.
But it doesn't sound much worse than we have at the moment.
Precisely. I think that the main point is that we're avoiding no deal, and we're also avoiding the possibility of a Corbyn-led Labour administration. And either of those situations would be disastrous for UK assets. So in a sense, we're kind of we're getting rid of the downside tail risks for UK assets in a broader sense.
So why aren't we buying the pound now?
I think if you look at sterling and how it's traded reasonably well in the last number of weeks, where levels around 123 against the dollar and 0.89 against the euro. From here, really, I think that if you wanted to trade sterling from the long side, certainly using option strategies makes a lot of sense because you're not going to be affected too much by the headline risks. For UK assets more broadly, they're cheap, but they're not yet cheap enough to go in, with a huge position. So certainly from my perspective, having modest positions in sterling and indeed in UK equities and or gilts makes some sense.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, we've been seeing sell-side surveys about positioning which suggest that the pound is not an extreme short anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you look at the CFTC data, that does indicate there's an extreme short. However, more cash sort of positioning data does indicate that speculators and indeed even real money investors have kind of started to curtail their sterling shorts.
It doesn't make sense to be full size in a long position, even though one could paint a more constructive outlook.
Indeed, I mean, and that's why we prefer to position via option strategies at the moment rather than via outright cash positions.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.